And with sharing, like I have connected with other people. I do overshare sometimes, but I've made really good friends that way.
Of course.
Yeah, that's. I feel like many people, like you were saying, Kevin. It's like kind of there's a way in which artistry is kind of like finding beauty in oversharing, and then doing it with other people who do that.
I think it's a matter of discernment now.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Practicing when and when not to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the Embracing Mystery podcast. Join us as we explore together ways that we can embrace creative and spiritual mystery in our lives and simultaneously find ourselves embraced in the mystery of compassionate, creative interconnection, held by what may be called the divine or source or consciousness or even mystery itself. In the process, we seek to become more fully ourselves, find our home and places of belonging, and grow as creative, spiritual, and relational beings. Well, it's great to be back with everybody. And for this episode, the 5th episode, actually, of Embracing Mystery, at the end of our 4th episode, we were dancing around the question of whether every expression of our creativity that we engage with actually needs to be shared or not. And that raised questions about how we relate to unfinished work. It relates to sort of begging the question of what it means to complete something at all and whether something is finished and then we want to share it. In this episode, which we've called Inner Mystery, Raymond will be facilitating the next spiral of our conversation about all of this, and he'll introduce that. But before that, as we prepare to listen and share with each other and respond, I just want to introduce a brief practice, get our minds settled and quiet and ready to receive and to give. So I'm going to settle us down with a little bit of breathing and paying attention to that. We're going to pay attention to thoughts, and I'll explain that as we go. Also to feelings, I'll explain that as we go. And then we'll pause for a few moments again, and I will hit our little gong, and we'll hand it over to Raymond at that point. So just as we get ourselves silent, take a deep breath and let that out. Do that maybe 2 or 3 times, just paying attention to the breath going in and out as you get settled. And just the position and weight of your body, if you're sitting or standing or perhaps laying down or driving as you're listening, just whatever your body is doing at the moment and how it feels. And then for the purpose of today with our thoughts, think of your mind as like a blue sky. And whatever thoughts might be floating around right now, just think of those as clouds. And right now you're just observing those clouds. And you're aware of thoughts that come and go, but just don't grab onto them. Don't fly into them. Just let them float around in the sky for a bit. And then very similar with our feelings. Again, as if your soul, your mind, yourself was a blue sky, your feelings were the clouds. Just see them, notice them, feel them. And then once again, we'll close with just paying attention to our breathing for a few moments, in and out. Okay. Well, Raymond, over to you. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So, like you mentioned, the name of this episode is Inner Mystery, and I thought of it as a sort of a play on the title of the podcast, which is Embracing Mystery. So, the idea of embracing inner mystery, dovetailing off of this idea of what is supposed to, let's say, or what we ought to, or what we want to share with the greater public versus what we want to keep to ourselves. And that barrier, let's say, between the public and the private, or our own sort of inner psyche, as being a form of mystery. So when I think of embracing inner mystery, a couple plays on that idea that come to mind. One of them is what is inner mystery? So embracing in the sense of like understanding what that is for each of us and then collectively, and then embracing inner mystery as cultivating inner mystery. So going back to the idea of what we share, what we don't. How do we do that as artists, maybe as people, and how that relates to our spiritual practices. So maybe the first question I would like to ask the table is, what does this sense of inner mystery mean to each of you? Mm-hmm. Specifically inner mystery as opposed to mystery at large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I forget where I ran into it, but I like the imagery or language of like an inner landscape. Not imagining it as kind of a finite thing that I'm going to figure out and have all perfectly mapped out, but just a space of exploration and journeying and wandering and discovering. Both, and that's something for yourself, cultivating your own inner mystery, but also just even in coming alongside someone else and getting to know them, of the depths that each of us possess. That can be frightening and beautiful and all sorts of mix of things coming up there. And maybe that's just our shadow, but I like to think of it in this positive sense of like, oh, what could we find?
Yeah.
That's like kind of my starting point, at least.
Yeah. Positive landscape.
Yeah. Naz, do you have something?
I think a few things come to mind when I think inner mystery. The first thing is probably seeing things, again, beyond what's on the outside. Mm-hmm. You know, what you look like, and all the assumptions that come with that, or baggage. And the other thing that comes to mind is probably the inner mystery is, I don't know if it's so much of a mystery, because when I think of mystery, I also think of secrets.
Yep.
Yeah. So keeping things that I probably can't talk about as easily.
Yeah. I found, as I'm listening to you both, and I hadn't thought about that aspect of it yet. I'm aware that there's sort of two things, as you were asking what it means to us, Raymond. I think one thing for me is there are, like in my creativity, there are things that I express and say as a song lyric or a poem sometimes that I don't actually really understand the image or the line or the metaphor or what it means. It has a certain emotive quality to it. But if you were to say, what do you mean? I wouldn't know what to say myself. And then I'm sure we've all had whatever I did say at that moment, a month later, I might say something else. I've seen something else in it. So there's that level of mystery. Like, where's that coming from? What's going on in me? But there's also just like, and this is particularly true of just sort of psychologically and emotionally, what I go through. There's also a level of like just not being able to articulate what is going on in me. And there's times when I think I can, and I sit down to like journal or write it down or capture it, and it's like slipped away. So there's that level as well. And I find that really that creates anxiety actually for me. Like
The inability to articulate
to
it.
grab it somehow when I think I should or something. I don't know. And I don't know where that comes from. That's probably something to analyze at some point. But yeah, there's
Part of your mystery.
there's exactly. And then that adds anxiety, which is another part of the emotional combustion going on. So
Yeah. No, it's interesting. There already, to me, one thing that's arising is that there already seems to be this kind of like internal moral quality to each of our descriptions of what inner mystery is, in the sense of moral, in the sense of like there's a sort of a discernment, or like a kind of a binary polarity thing going on, where it's like there's light and shadow. I mean, Stephen, you mentioned shadow, and then you use the word positive. Kevin, you're talking about how there's a kind of a binary between like the ineffable, or the thing that you can't express, and your feelings around that, and what you're able to kind of put into language. Naz, you were talking about secrecy, and sort of, things that we're unable or don't want to share with other people, secrets that we can even hold from ourselves or from our conscious mind. And so I guess what is coming to my mind as we're talking about the notion of embracing inner mystery, or what inner mystery is to what degree it's valuable to have moral judgments about what's inside of us in that way. Because I would think that the idea of embracing is kind of like, well, it's all there.
That's a good point.
So just kind of throwing it out there as a just to see how you guys feel about that. To what degree is that necessary or important, or should we just throw it out the window?
What's internally.
Yeah. Or to what degree we shouldn't accept it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you asked the first part of the question, like the other framework that's in my mind is internal family systems, thinking about how our own internal dynamics are actually multiple parts and roles that things within us play.
Sure.
And the way that you bring healing and wholeness in your system is to actually welcome and to compassionately welcome them to the place of yourself, capital S, like a deeper grounded place, however you understand that spiritually or ontologically. In which case I would say, like, you might not love how every role is working. Like, hey, this is really dysfunctional in my life right now, but there's a fundamental compassion towards them, rather than like a judgment of like, I'm going to get rid of a habit by pushing it away from myself.
Yeah.
So that would be my starting point for answering that, is like, no, welcome it.
Yeah. Compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I went as well. And it actually connects with, the comment I made earlier about, the anxiety about not being able to grab hold of things. There is a judgmentalism going on in that,
sure.
That surfaced in that prior part of our conversation with myself and, with us, but about my conversations with myself. And I think, which is ironic, I've been doing a whole bunch of things lately, really trying to focus on helping other people and myself cultivate sort of imaginative empathy for ourselves, not just others.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. And yet, my first response to inner mystery today is, yeah, but then I can't grab it. And that's why it just makes me really anxious, because I can't get a hold of it, which must mean that I think badly of myself about it, which is true, and so,
or maybe it shows how we relate to mystery itself, of like the unknowability piece of it. Like I heard in what you were saying, maybe like, I wish I could grasp at having the mystery understood, which is different than not liking it.
Yeah. Well, and that would be a compassionate response, would be like, oh, I just want to know it, and I want to be able to get my arms around it and embrace it, embracing the mystery of it.
Yeah.
There is a part of me, but I ought to be able to do that. So why am I not being? Oh, that makes me anxious. And then So,
like
anyway,
the ought bit.
The ought. Yeah.
I think what's coming up for me about judgment is also asking myself, where is it coming from? Where is this judgment coming from?
Yeah.
Is this my own voice, or is this someone else's
really
voice? Where have I learned this? Where is it coming from actually?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's really, really good.
Yeah.
Whose voice is that's bouncing around in there?
Right. And it even goes back to internal family systems. The idea that we in some sense, like our individual psyches, which we often kind of frame as like something not necessarily solid, but certainly singular or individual, is or it can be very multiplicate, or and it's just there are a lot of different forces and gods, or perspectives. It's like it kind of reminds me of like a cubist painting. It's like there's a sort of vague sense of like of an object there, but it's kind of coming from different ways and informing what the thing in itself is. I definitely see a connection between that idea psychologically or emotionally, with regards to this, like this notion of judgments kind of coming in, influencing us from outside, and questioning where that judgment is coming from, and the sort of analogous process in in creativity. That just seems to directly relate to the idea of what do we share when, and our relationship with like the public at large. Like how is inner mystery, or sort of the idea of embracing inner mystery as a creative person, does it involve a kind of protection of this thing that we're trying to treat with compassion, whatever you want to call it? And to what degree does that entail not sharing things? Do you see what I'm saying? So if part of the idea is to question where these judgments are coming from, perhaps like work through those judgments to release them, how much of that is just simply setting up a very real boundary, a concrete boundary of like, all right, this is not for other people, this is for me to kind of work on myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
I think I can relate that to my memoir that I've been trying to work on, and I've mentioned before on this podcast that I've been trying to work on for like 7 years, and had a draft-ish, and then I, realized I'm a different person after 7 years. Maybe I understand things a lot differently. The ethical components of sharing information about my life, because it's intertwined with other people's lives. Yeah. And so that's something, I don't know if it'll ever get done, because I don't know if I actually want to share it, or if people actually deserve to
interesting.
read it.
That's really interesting. That's a whole different, because we're usually like, as artists, like, does this deserve to be heard and received, right? Is it good enough?
Yeah.
Right. Which is behind that is, am I good enough?
Sure.
The person who created it, like, am I? And your question is really, really interesting. Do others, who would be those who would deserve it? It might be a way to phrase it, but you asked it just very directly, like, does anybody deserve this? I think that's brilliant.
Could you say more about your thinking behind that?
Yeah,
I'm just curious of like, are there people, are there particular people, or just the whole public?
I authentically want to share my experiences and all the nuances and layers, and I guess all the different ways or the evolutions that I've thought about my life and what I've experienced, because I think other people would relate to it. But I'm also really not paranoid, but like I'm really mindful of not wanting to become like entertainment for someone or a product
To be consumed.
Yeah.
Especially if it's your life.
Yeah.
I think that relates to something that I was thinking about. I may have alluded to it earlier, but like as I was mulling over this topic, I mean, the sense of mystery for me connects directly with the idea of like mystery cults, right? Mystery cults often are set up for a very similar feeling that like not everyone deserves this information, not everyone is ready for it, not everyone is prepared for it, and there's something sacred about it that needs to be protected and should only be disseminated to like initiates. So there's like an initiation process where people come to know the mysteries, and then they become kind of they participated, they become part of this lineage that then protects the information and passes and sort of preserves it for the future, untainted by interpretation or the world, or just the kind of telephone game and consumption that can come from just sharing things. And so like for me, I've talked about this before, that I'm becoming like less and less like sort of more and more reticent to share things in general. And related to that is the idea of kind of cultivating mysteries in silence, sort of internally. But the idea of having an initiation process, or like embracing being mysterious, sort of that there maybe, again, not to use the ought word, but yeah, maybe there should be, or maybe it's useful for there to be like very specific and actually thick boundaries between what people out there in the ether get to see versus, just kind of like laying it all out there. I don't know. How do you guys feel about this idea of playing off what you said, Naz?
To either of you?
Well, I just think even just at a natural level, I notice I'm more willing to share things, or even different versions of explaining. Like, say I make a visual piece, the explanation that's in like my caption on Instagram, let's say, is often not all of what the piece meant to me, and I'm filtering. And that's different than what I might show you, where you're like someone at this table. I might tell them, hey, this is all of actually what happened here. Or we're processing it with my spiritual director. Like, that's a very different setting and conversation. And part of that is to go back to the judgment piece of like, am I in a space where I would want to have judgment around whatever that is? I want to protect it and let it be what it is without outside influence on like needing to guard it or protect, like, oh, look, I just don't want it to expose things that feel vulnerable or in process. And I think there's a healthy component to that, and there's an unhealthy. The healthy is letting things emerge naturally in a way that's like not tainted or wrongly influenced by people who are like, you don't know me, you're not living my life. And the unhealthy being, am I just mature enough as a human being to not take myself too seriously and just not care?
Right.
And there's probably a balance of those things, of
Right.
how to cultivate that inner mystery and also privacy, I guess, in a healthy sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think what it made me, what sort of the coin that dropped for me in the middle of this is that I think, and I don't want to in any way diminish the, artistic expressions where people are trying to talk raw, honest about their feelings as an individual human being in a certain situation. I think there's a very valid place. But it occurs to me that's in terms of the scope of human history and the scope of human creativity, that's a very recent understanding of art.
To be as brutally honest and raw as you can be.
And individual, and these are my feelings, and this is myself. That's a very recent development in terms of understanding the role of art. Art has been, it's not that individuals weren't involved, obviously, or feelings weren't involved, but it's had different roles. And I wonder if, without eliminating or minimizing or erasing the importance of that more recent development historically, which I think is important for humanity, actually, because sometimes you're helping other people have ways to articulate things that they just don't have words for because of their inner mystery, right? They haven't been able to articulate it. But I wonder if some of what you're digging at here, Raymond, with us is it's also okay to create things that aren't about my feelings.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Public art in the function.
yeah, and that is also important. Or where I'm trying to express feelings that are perhaps much more communal than just individual, or et cetera. And again, I'm not creating a dichotomy here. I think there's a both and, but it just made me ponder that a bit in terms of because in the singer-songwriter world, a lot of songs are written about and introduced, So one day I woke up, I was feeling really sad, and I wrote this song, which is fine, right? I don't always have to share those songs with everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like anyway, I'm not answering anything except you guys have taken my thoughts to a different spot.
Yeah, no, I definitely have, there's a couple different directions I wanted to go with that. Maybe, one direction I can take it is with regards to spirituality as a whole, right? So I've definitely been on different sides of this, throughout my life. But you know, there seems to, not to kind of slap a binary on it, but there does seem to be a kind of camp that says that transcendent experiences, or again, sort of mystical experiences in that sense, are more often than not experiences that are shared, right? Or that are sort of like intensely communal. And there's maybe another camp in contrast that says, well, no, it's about kind of like withdrawing into yourself and kind of like having something that is pure and direct by virtue of your own solitude and isolation. And so here again, like psychologically, creatively, or sorry, artistically, and like spiritually, we're kind of seemingly caught between these two poles, and they do seem to kind of interrelate in various ways. And so I'm kind of wondering then, like, what is the is there value spiritually in sort of like in withdrawal and in inner mystery, as opposed to the idea of public art, public spirituality, things that are approaching universal? And maybe I can start with Naz, and we can kind of go around the table of just like how you relate to this divide with regards to spirituality, however you understand that, or spiritual practice, let's say.
And that's in regards to like withdrawing.
Well, yeah, sort of like communal / the public versus private, or inner mystery in the sense of like kind of like guarding or just withdrawing to your own space.
Yeah, it's also very interesting because I'm just also thinking about my own life and like sharing versus not sharing creative work and a lot of other that, because I feel like I've been a very private person most of my life, except in the last few years I started to share. But I don't know, like with withdrawing and going into yourself, I think part of that was also a coping mechanism for me.
Right.
It wasn't, I don't know if it was like willingly, I don't know if it was like complete free will, but I felt like kind of going into myself was the only place I could go for a very long time. Yeah.
Would you, just as a follow-up, would you say that then like are you being very conscious, like, so for example with the memoir idea, was part of the impetus for that like the desire to kind of go in the other direction, like deliberately, as a sort of like a changing coping strategy, or
I think to externalize a lot of the stuff that's inside and to kind of understand. I think that's why I wanted to write it, plus to connect it with all these other theories and frameworks that I was learning in school, to kind of make sense of it a little bit better outside of myself. Because sometimes all that stuff that's inside can be really, I don't know, I can get lost inside myself sometimes.
It can be messy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And with sharing, like I have connected with other people. I do overshare sometimes, but I've made really good friends that way.
Of course.
Yeah, that's I feel like many people, like you were saying, Kevin, it's like kind of, there's a way in which artistry is kind of like finding beauty in oversharing and then doing it with other people who do that.
I think it's a matter of discernment now.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Practicing when and when not to share.
Yeah.
I'm still ping-ponging on it. Do you have something, Stephen?
I mean, I have some starting thoughts. I don't know what my own opinion is yet, but I was working through it. I was thinking about like, well, where would different spiritual heritages be if we didn't have the mystics in each tradition who are communicating something of their experience?
Yeah.
Like
their private
or the wisdom that they've gained from it, if nothing else. And I was reflecting on, so my meditation teacher, I honestly have no idea what he has or hasn't experienced in some of the things he's teaching me, of like the fullness of where a particular practice might lead in terms of insight. He hasn't told me what his personal experience is. I have no clue.
He's probably making it up on the spot.
I highly doubt that. But in terms of like, okay, has he reached this jhana? Has he reached this point in meditation practice? I don't know. And there's like a willingness to like let go of his own ego, and his ego's not in it. But he's communicating teaching. And then you have other kinds of mystical traditions where people are just saying, here was my vision, here's this. Or you have others who then write poetry about things that, like, where would we be without that poetry? So I'm really torn. I don't. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
I'm mulling it over. I think there's a usefulness in both, and for my own practice, it would be, I'm going to sit with and discern: is this something to share, or at least the insights from it, if not the whole thing? Because some of it is unexplainable. Like it's feeling. It's how do you communicate this? It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's ineffable.
It's funny how both you and Naz used the word discernment, and that's been kind of bounced around a couple of times in this conversation. And so maybe from like a pragmatic standpoint, so like let's say, we're all kind of moving through our lives and kind of becoming different people, again, artistically, spiritually, so on. It does seem to be the case that like this idea of maybe embracing as a form of like psychological integration, that maybe like discernment is the key of like, well, it can't go too far in this one direction, can't go too far in this other direction, in terms of like cultivating ourselves as artists and as just people.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have ideas around these sort of practical methods or processes of discerning then what is or is not shared? And that can be like a creative statement. It can be just like, with regards to like how we relate to people. It's a question of, again, like sort of like boundary negotiation. Like what are some tactics or like negotiation strategies to be able to set those up properly and have them be fluid? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think thinking about context. What is the context that
Yeah.
I'm going to be sharing in? Is it going to be on social media? Is it only going to be in these few people that I'm going to invite to my house for an intimate, art sharing or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very different.
Yeah, I think context does. And I think people's own expectations of the context that you're sharing in, and we're probably always, to use a different word than discernment, we're in consciously and unconsciously, we're reading those tea leaves all the time before we share something, right? And we're internally trying to filter, usually, whether we know it or not. Some of us just have more porous filters, than others,
Right.
and more gets through and whatever, but we're all doing it. But I think and Naz, I think you were touching on this in a prior comment about the comfort in being alone, and yet is that just a protective kind of thing? I forget your exact words, but it was that sort of thing. And I think both, getting back to your question about the sort of communal experience and the individual experience of transcendence, et cetera, I think both can end up, I think both are really important. Both are part of human experience. Both can be cultivated and probably should be welcomed. There's that should and ought thing. But because I think let me put it, I think it's natural for human beings to have both.
Right.
I'm more comfortable alone. And some of that is really good. But I also know some of it is family system, family of origin, being alone a lot as a kid, and two parents that were really, kind of overbearing, domineering in their presence. So it was just a lot easier and more fun to not be with them at times.
Yeah.
If my brother and sister are listening to this, just know that, anyway, we've talked about this.
We can, we'll make some edits.
Anyway, so I just think, I think, but I also think you can hide in the communal from yourself.
That's right.
So I think they both have a,
I'm too introverted to know what that feels like. Could you please explain? I don't recognize what that means.
yeah,
Have you heard of, never mind.
me too. I mean, me too. I'm like, but I think, I just think it's, both are really positive. Both have a shadow to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there things that you hold back that you create? Because you end up sharing a lot of things, and I just don't know. Are you actually sharing? Are you actually creating twice as much as you're sharing? In which case, I don't know how you make
There's
so
a
much.
lot, and there's a lot of stuff that's like in drafts and all sorts of stuff. We talked a bit about our storage systems in one of our conversations. I don't remember if it was in the podcast or after one of our conversations at a table, but I have a ton of stuff floating around, and I do decide at some point what to bring out to others. And not, and different reasons for that. Usually it has to do with, I just don't think it's very good yet, so I'm sitting on that. But yeah, anyway.
Well, maybe that's this idea of if each of us has like a vault, like Prince's vault, that maybe perhaps in the next conversation we can talk about, like how things, once we do discern and decide that something is worth sharing or we want to share something, like the process of taking something from the vault or from a state of kind of like nebulousness or like sort of it's in the middle of formation to like complete it and then go from there. Yeah. But this was a great conversation, and I appreciate the way it kind of wound in and out and bounced between different poles, and yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for facilitating. That was great. I don't know if we got to some of the questions you had thought about ahead of time,
I think we covered a lot of ground.
You did a good job of just kind of moving us around. So thank you. I appreciate that. And a lot to chew on. There's still a lot more here. A lot of, as they say, meat on that bone. Sorry to the vegetarians. There's a lot of carrot on the outside. Anyway, but as we get ready to kind of segue to some time that we're going to have now sitting around talking about this right now here live in this room, it's a great way to just segue and say, for those of you who are listening or viewing this, we welcome you to participate in that ongoing conversation. And one of the ways to do that is through comments in the YouTube channel. And the reason I'm saying that right now is Raymond just mentioned maybe this is a topic for next time. We actually don't have a list of topics in order that we're going to be getting to. We wait until an episode like this finishes, and then we depend on our conversations and anything that our listening audience shares with us to determine where we should go next. And that has shaped topics and directions. So I want to encourage that. Please join us in that ongoing conversation. And if you're in the Los Angeles area and the Pasadena area, join us for the next time that we get together live, and you can participate with us following the actual podcast conversation with our ongoing conversations at table. And by the way, just since I'm mentioning that would be October the 5th. So hopefully you can join us at some point for that. I did want to say before we wrap up that we took a month off. The month before that, during our podcast, we concluded by talking about the Table Collective course called Wisdom for Artists from Ancient Wells. And we were encouraging people to think about becoming part of a cohort that we were going to launch in August. We made a decision to postpone the cohort until January. So that is still open. The self-paced version of that course is available to join at any time, and I would encourage you to check that out, which leads me to my sort of final comment, which is there's just a lot about Table Collective, our different offerings, our rhythms, the things that we do, ways to connect with each other in between get-togethers and meetups. Lots of information on our website, tablecollective.art. So check it out, and hope to hear from you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Naz. Thank you, Raymond. And we'll see everybody next time.